Hi, everyone, and welcome to our weekly podcast, Achieving Unity Success, One Step at a Time. It is the success formula. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Intrican, and I am excited that you're here. And I hope you have this on your calendar and you come back every week. And I know most of you will also go to, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of you will go to our website and view the recording of this. And if you do, please feel free to give feedback. I'll give a site just in a minute how you can contact me, contact us, and give feedback on it. Always ask for the free Achieving Unity Guide now. The site is on the screen. You can go to. The URL is at the top, the QR code at the bottom left. So many ways of communication. I just hope you will communicate with us more and always. Creating solutions, one reality at a time. This is a picture of our website. I hope you will go out there, www.markintrican.com, www.achievingunity.com. There's many paths to get here, but let's get here and take it to the next level. As mentioned, Achieving Unity Success Formula. This is building the formula for achieving unity for that success today and tomorrow. Again, weekly podcast every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Again, hope you put it on your calendar. Love to see you on a weekly basis. Reality focused dynamics delivers success focused solutions. You can see that over in the top right in our logo. Reality focused dynamics from left to right, success focused solutions from top to bottom. Please contact us today for more information on number one, using Agile and Lean inside and outside of computer software. The Agile Manifesto, URL on the bottom right, was first written for software. But as I've worked with it, I'm certified in the Team Agile as well as the SAFe or Scaled Agile, also certified in ITIL. As I learn the processes, I see more and more every day that it's not just for associations, it's not just for corporations, it's not just for organizations. The different facets of Agile and Scrum and Kanban, DSDM, all of them, XP, they all can be used in the family environment as well. So you might ask, what is Agile? Agile is the ability that each of us have to create and respond to changes and improvements. Changes are short term, improvements are long term. That's what we want to build for our final goal. Agile enables us success in uncertain and possibly struggling environments by emphasizing adaptability through better collaboration and better communication. Yes, it works in the corporate environment, but it does work in the family, social, community environments as well. Lean is a methodology focused on maximizing value by minimizing waste. It optimizes our processes through continuous improvement. When we see something, it doesn't work, let's improve it. Let's make it so it can work. This includes effectiveness and efficiency. The philosophy can be used in every discipline, every vertical around the world, including our homes and our family. Connect with me and I'll show you more on how to break down all issues, products, and services from the most complex business projects, including rocket science. And yes, I've worked for Lockheed Martin and Boeing and other rocket organizations and companies. It works from there down to the basic steps of training our teenagers. Yes, it does. WID, BID, RID, GID. Write it down, break it down, review its dependencies, get it done. We can do that personally and professionally. Think of busy mornings at a family breakfast. Everyone has somewhere to go, something to do, from work to school to many other events, many other locations that they need to be. One of the things that we can do is have a family stand-up meeting each evening, during which everyone shares their needs or tasks for the next day. Then they put those on the refrigerator on little sticky notes, the things that need to be done that next morning. Maybe the chores, the responsibilities. Then that next morning, when the little sticky note task or need is done, you move that from the done column, I'm sorry, from the to do column to the done column. That way you can keep up with everything that's going on and if somebody's running behind. Something else you could do is create a breakfast station with pre-portioned ingredients and a weekly meal plan. Small cereal boxes, certain amount of food over here on one plate that we can dip from. It's all about organizing the process. Minimizing decision fatigue, all the decisions that have to be made, minimizing that, and then reducing the time searching for items can help everyone participate in a much, much smoother and more efficient process. Achieving unity, number two, achieving unity through encouragement, inspiration, and inclusion. This is our main drive. Because I put this in the middle because it affects and works directly with agile and lean, and also impact and work within my next section, which I'll talk to about in number three. Because encouragement can be the powerful force that fuels the core of empowerment. Powerful force that fuels the core of empowerment, empowering others. Encourage others to help accomplish their goals. Inspire each other to achieve every goal. Unity makes us a successful team. Include others and celebrate every victory, both personally and professionally. Together, all of us, in unity, we can overcome every challenge. Now, number three, unity starts at home. It shapes society, it transforms workplaces. And when we talk about it at the home, we have to think about simple things such as are we facing relationship challenges? Are we facing things as a parent? Are we having parenting difficulties? Are you, maybe someone you know, struggling with relationship issues or parenting time issues as a divorced or divorcing parent? We want to know about these things and to be able to help in these areas. We want to transform those frustrations into understanding with what the frustration? Where is the value in our actions? Aren't they based on those frustrations? The anger, the hate, the prejudice, don't those come from a frustration that we encountered? We must realize that anger, ANGER, holds no value nowhere. Anger is just actions not gaining effective results. That's why we get angry. That anger, not gaining those effective results. We need to learn to control that. We'll talk about more about that with Frank in a few minutes. Life happens from personal relationships to parenting time to even prenuptial agreements. Nuptials not required. A lot of us are getting together these days and not getting married because of the problems and difficulties in our court system. But we can learn to embrace and enjoy every moment and every challenge together by writing it down, breaking it down, review our dependencies on each other, and get it done. Get that love in gear. We can do that. One vision, one goal, achieving unity in all areas of our life. My course is coming up. Yay! Hope you look into it. 7 Steps to Achieving Unity Success Formula, Living Life Fully Through Present Moment Awareness. The course is going to start on April 3rd. It's a Thursday. Be for 7 sessions. They'll be for 90 minutes long. Start at 1 p.m. Pacific time, same time as this, 4 p.m. Eastern time. It is a 7-module live online course, Practical Journey with me. It's about discovering those essential practices, the ones for cultivating and integrating mindful presence to enhance our innate qualities, enabling each and every one of us to live more freely and authentically. By caring, helping, and including others, we can achieve a deeper sense of unity and connection at home, with our families, at work, and socially. The QR code's on the right. Check into it. Let me know what you think. Please feel free to sign up. Also, our website home, QR code's on the left. Contact page, if you want to contact me, use that QR code on the right. Get in touch with me. It's all about the power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others personally and professionally. Our next podcast is coming up. We have Raja coming in on the invisible disabilities to increase our profitabilities on March 12th. Janet McConnell coming in on Ignite Fitness on March 19th. Keeping the focus on people, the greatest asset. Jason Joey. He'll be here on March 26th. We have storytelling, effective marketing successes, ability for us to tell those stories, tell them clearly. Allison Verhalen on April 2nd. We have leadership resilience and team retention with Rose Harrell on April 9th. Remember, we have these going on every week. Please join in. The month of June will be all about fathers, 4 weeks about fathers and dads, being that masculine, gentlemanly person they can be, the good father, the good parent. In August, we're going to have 4 sessions on mothers, on moms, and all the great things they do and have done since life began. Let's come and pitch in, ask questions. I'd like to see on each and every one of them. And now our treat of the day. I'm excited. Frank and I have known each other a while. We know each other through Toastmasters. Well, Frank Dedominicis is an independent human resource trainer. Frank has been an independent human trainer for over 4 decades. I thought he's only about 39 years old to begin with. His main lanes are strategic planning, leadership, and productive conflict. We'll learn more about that in a minute also. With an interdisciplinary educational background, he has been on the cutting edge of effective education and is a vintage everything disc trainer. We'll go into that in a little bit also. He has something to give you. He provides insightful and transformational learning experiences. He supports organization success through effective development coaching, professional skill development, and as a global goodwill ambassador, advisory and marketing support for good causes. Frank is a person to talk to. But guess what? Under the hood, everyone that's here at the end of our podcast today, Frank wants to give a free copy of his PDF on productive conflict. So hang on tight. We'll go through that in just a minute. Let me stop the share. Let's go over here and let's bring Frank on board. Frank, how are you today?
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Frank. Just a second, let me get my screen set up. I'm going to have to turn this over to Renee. She could do this so much better than I could. Things in the way here. I'll pin you the first screen. Go up here and I'll pin me next to you. And I think we're together, Frank. Congratulations on all the great work that you're doing. Thank you for being here. This is awesome, and I'm so excited to have you here today. Let me start off with the very first question. Well, first, tell us about yourself and what you've done for the last 40 years, those last 40 decades. Give us a little few clues about who Frank is.
Well, let me go back to 60 years because the values that drive me now are the same values I had as a teenager. I was a rebellious young, they used to call us radicals, but that doesn't mean what it means today. It meant change agents back then. So I was very much involved in community service, and later in my 20s, I worked in community action programs. And I was always given to being helpful. It was in the 70s when I was involved with the community action programs that I became initially involved with training. My boss noticed that I was not the most polished manager. I'll just put it that way. I would have quite the discussion with that young Frank today, but my boss was kind enough to put me through leadership effectiveness training, which was one of the big 5 at that time. Organization development was just beginning to merge traditional Peter Drucker management by objectives type of training with soft skills. It was the larger organizations that had the luxury of time and money to do that. So I went through what I did not expect, my first transformational experience at a time in my life when I was young and needed organization and goal clarity, and most importantly, proper communication with people. I was simply someone who did not know that listening is a skill. I thought listening was what you did while you waited for your turn to talk.
Well said. Uh,
So, to make a long story short, the teams that I supervised, I was supervising four managers and 36 or 40 line people. But over time, things changed because I applied what I learned about leadership, very, very elemental things about leadership, starting just with listening. Also, I had being a young, quote unquote, positive activist, community activist, I also was sensitive to injustice, which I think most people are. So I was part of a group that exposed bad business practices in the factories in my neighborhood in Philadelphia. A group of us would go in and take photographs of unsafe working conditions, and
wow.
while one person would go and pretend to apply for a job, and then every week we would publish at the back of our community newsletter an expose on what companies need to be exposed. So although that was the very seed of my activism, I also knew that I was destined to influence others. Forgive me if it sounds egotistical, but I remember my mom putting her hand on my shoulder when I told her when I was young, I'm going to not be in the system. I'm going to be outside to help doctor it and make it more humane. And she said, Frankie, someday you're going to influence a lot of people. And I happen to believe that. So, so look
I
at
agree.
never underestimate the power of your words, especially when you're speaking to young people. So that led me to a series of licenses with various major training companies. 40 years ago, I was leading personal intensives. That was very popular at the time. Esalen Institute was using T groups, sensitivity groups. We were sitting in circles, more like group therapy, and working out what was best for the organization. That was a good model. It had both skills based trainings available, which I participated in, and there were also other types of um, intensives that I did not subscribe to that were also intensive, but they're more like tear down the personality and rebuild them type of programs, which I don't subscribe to. I was able to, in just recently, in the past, say, 15 years, to merge what I learned about traditional management objectives with soft skills and develop my own form of infotainment, I call it, a way of having fun with teaching and teaching things that are immediately practical in someone's life. And to close on your question, I'll say this. I was so lucky when I was in high school because I met two innovative teachers through the school board, the Philadelphia School Board, Norm Newberg and Terry Borton, who did not invent, but introduced the concept of affective education, of education of the total person. So I was able to study in my college years through an interdisciplinary program that involved three disciplines: philosophy, psychology, and sociology, to study one subject for 3 hours with three teachers. We studied poverty and we studied institutional violence the next year. And it was Norm Newberg and Terry Borton, famous now in the world of affective education, for allowing students to immerse themselves totally in the subject, not just giving book reports. So that's what started me in my career in training 40 years ago, wanting to provide the type of education that doesn't just give information, but creates a safe space for people to explore their own attitudes and how they relate and to make those changes. And there was such a self-esteem reward from that type of work, I just could not stop.
Wow, you've been in a pretty impressive life. I'm impressed. I know that. Well, I've been impressed since I've met you many years ago. But you have a lot of things that you have built upon and quite a foundation that you have grown from. Do you think it was your mother that sparked that? You think what if there was something that was a spark? How do you feel that you got to spark that initial passion that you had to help people? Do you feel was it just an accumulation of all
I,
the things that you're talking about, or was there that one spark?
that's a good question. Absolutely, my mother has been a pivotal influence in my life. All the years of her life, of our deep friendship, not just that conversation in my youth that I would be what I am today, but even supporting me recently in my attitude about what I'm doing. Um, to answer your question directly, no, I don't think there was influence, but I think it was embedded in me. I don't know. It's just part of my nature. If I see something broken, I want to fix it. You know, if I visit your house, you know, forgive me, I might straighten the picture on the wall. And the same thing with organizations. You know, I really, you know, I don't want to use the word hate, but I really despise the waste of human energy when you consider what a beautiful creation the individual is. And unfortunately, I think most of us are too self centered to have a sincere curiosity into the depths of others. So I've always wanted to have meaningful conversations, and I've really not want to engage in just, you know, babbling on the phone about the news or about other people. But my mind
Exactly.
goes elsewhere, goes to the higher values of life and what makes our relationships uh, harmonious.
I so true with what you're saying because there are a lot of people that, as I mentioned earlier, that are in that culture before what they've learned, and they're carrying that culture forward. They're carrying that learning forward, and they're not relearning or improving that learning to realize that there could be a better way, or what you're doing now could take you to that next level, right?
You're correct. Yes.
And that goes back to what you said earlier about lean, is what we talked about when I first brought up in this first few slides, that eliminating waste. And like you're talking about that process, you're talking about the waste, that there's so much more we can build on, and wasting time talking about sometimes all of our political, could be nonsense on TV
Uh-huh.
by both parties, all affiliations. It's not just one,
Yeah.
but some of that is just not taking us anywhere, is it?
It's taken us someplace it should not. And I'll reference something relative to the Wiley's DISC research, which has been recent. Only in the past 5 years have we really delved deeply into the emotional posture of people's styles. And here's what we have found. A study was done, and I'll provide the citation in the free ebook I'll give you at the end of this. A study was done with a group of two different groups that were politically separate, conservatives and not conservatives. Would have been interesting to have them in the same room, but but at any rate, they were both asked to present an argument for why they are absolutely right, and we certainly hear a lot of absolute moralism these days.
Oh, don't we?
They're absolutely right, and the other person's not only wrong, but they're the demons for undermining. And the same thing with the other group. They were given the same instruction: explain why you're right and your opponent's wrong. And they did. And when they did, the frontal lobes lit up: thinking, reasoning, thought processing, right? And then a very interesting exercise was given to them. They were asked, and if you've studied debate, you know empathy is an important part of understanding your opponent, arguing the point of view you disagree with. And that's exactly what they did. They had them explain why they were wrong, how could I possibly be wrong? You know, my self identity is so wrapped up in self righteousness. You know, we seldom look at how much our ego drives us, and to explain why the other person is right. And what they found out is that when I, the participant in the exercise, had the opportunity to explain why my opponent was wrong and why that reinforced why I'm right, an interesting thing happened. The frontal lobes were not as active, they were minimally active. But the area of the brain that registers emotions, particularly the emotion of disgust, registered. And also
Mm,
in that same area that's responsible for dispensing the interferons, the feel good, the pleasure chemicals, oxytocin, and all that, that pleasure center lit up. So, is there a payback for us? Do we subconsciously enjoy? I'm going to suggest yes. I'm going to suggest that the reason we get hooked into a news headline, no matter what side you're on, because I believe every news headline is clickbait. It gives us a dopamine hit. Oh, yeah, great. Our enemies exposed, sued, dead, whatever. It makes us feel like we're self righteous. We're disgusted with the enemy and good, they're being sued or something bad happened to them. And
something negative.
something negative. And it doesn't have to be along party lines, it's just individuals gossip. Gossip. What about a destructive force in society? Yet it's accepted as as normal because usually it's not in a constructive way. I don't get together with Mark to edify. Oh, by the way, I want to say how great Rich was in that talk. I don't take time to do that. Why not? We don't call our shrink to say I'm having a joyful day today, do we? Well, the same thing with the influence of the media on us. We are not aware that we can become neurochemically addicted to having excitable news headlines spark us because it gives us subconsciously, and we probably wouldn't admit this, gives us a feeling of pleasure in being superior or
And
thinking we're superior.
and I like what you're saying too, because as you're saying, it's both being coaches, and I know for me as a coach, people are coming to me to improve. They see some ways that their things are not perfect, but they can be improved. And that part of the process, like with you, I think you're on the cutting edge of effective education. Am I getting that right? Because that cutting edge takes it to that next level of improvement. Is that right?
Yes, we refer to as affective, impacting our feelings. Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that if you don't mind?
Um, what do you want to know?
Well, if we're talking about affective other than effective, it's an affective feeling. It's an affective education and how it's going to shape your kind of what you do. I think you talk about Norm Newberg and Terry Borton in that Parkway program.
Yeah.
It's about the interdisciplinary process of the teachers and societal subjects that are building a new process. And as like you're saying, you've been in DISC for so long. But building that process for us to work with others so much better.
Well, let me answer by saying there's two parts to that. One is the content and delivery. And the second piece is the interpretation, the sensitivity of the teacher or trainer. I think one of the reasons I've stayed with DISC as a tool, I don't lean on it exclusively. It's a good tool, but I don't proselytize for it. It's not a clinical instrument that's predictable. It simply tells you your predominant tendencies in interactions with others. Although that profile that you take this morning in the corporate boardroom might look completely different than the profile you would take of yourself at home with your lover or spouse in the evening. We are very fluid and flexible. So, and with that, I must mention two things that have been a little bit of pee for me, and that's the tendency to call DISC a personality tool or assessment. It's not. It's not a clinical instrument. It simply tells predominant tendencies. And also, your profile could change next week if you've gone through some significant emotional event. So I caution people about labeling themselves a blue, a nine, a D, or whatever. It's just a helpful way of beginning the conversation so you can have a non threatening dialogue about behavior, particularly in the corporate environment where we don't know where I shouldn't say don't know, but generally people don't know how to approach other people to speak in a way that allows other people to hear what you have to say. I'm sure Mark knows what I'm talking about.
And to touch on that, and as we joked earlier, and I have a smile on my face, but I'm going to challenge you.
Yes.
As you were talking earlier about one test at work and a different test on the personal side, Why do we separate those feelings so much? Because as I work with different ideas and different concepts, agile, lean, two of them, how they do actually connect personally and professionally. Can you tell me how what you feel about that?
Yes, in the middle days of DISC in the 80s and 90s, we would ask people to do their input based on how they see themselves at work or at home. So we would get two different profiles and we would be able to see what went up and down a little bit. Nowadays, we find that people are pretty much the same person in most environments with some changes. So we don't lean on that as much anymore, but we can tell the differences. For example, you might need to be uncomfortably assertive. Maybe you're a high C, a high critical type that's low verbal, a thoughtful listener who doesn't like to speak, feels nervous with speaking, even in social situations. But at work, you're called upon to give a report or to provide direction and discipline. So you must have enforced behavior. You must pull up your assertiveness, or what we call a dominance, assertive aggressiveness, in order to act differently. It's not as if you're a different person or you're an actor, the environment dictates the change. And the same thing with the example I used. In the evening, perhaps you're with someone you love, as a good example, and your dominance drops completely, and you're totally passive. Oh, I don't care. Where do you want to go? What do you want to order? I don't care. And you're totally compliant. So I encourage people not to label themselves DISC, but think of these four elements as, like, just imagine a container with four different oils that mix. That's how complex it is. I am You can probably tell I am what they refer to as a high I, high empathy. I connect with people. I'm a people magnet. And I have a trail MD, which most people don't see because I hide it. But I have a hammer that I could pull up if I need to lay down the law or be serious, very very serious about something. But most people don't see me in either one of those styles. They see me as an S, someone who's very calm and secure, because that's my enforced behavior. I like to make room for other people, not just their physical presence, but their state of consciousness, and not to dominate with changing the subject, but really enter into the mind space that they're in when they're talking about someone. You talked about conflict and differences. I learned a lot about how to deal with, or how to connect with others who have a totally opposite point of view. I read a book by Monica Guzman. Uh, the name of the book is, here it comes. Um, I never thought of it that way. She's a young journalist who had absolutely opposite political opinions as her mother and father, who she lived with. And she had long experience in interviewing people and training herself to be a neutral interviewer. And what she learned is, over time, and I've developed this too, I've developed a sincere curiosity about the other. Recently, I talked to a friend who's totally polar opposite to me. And instead of thinking, how in the world could you think that way? I had a sincere curiosity about his thinking. And I asked instead, how did you come to that conclusion? What made you think that way? And what it did, to summarize, what it did is it didn't change the relationship in that moment. But in the next meeting, there was much less tension with us.
That's excellent. And as you mentioned that, that's something that I show some people, but that ability to ask that question and smile
Yes.
is so beneficial. And I
Yes.
have three pictures here on my wall, and they say, always respond with a question first as you smile. It's got a picture of the question mark, a picture of a guy doing his thumbs up. That's what I always try to think about. Do I always do it? No, I don't. I try, but I always joke about trying is a percentage. How far along in that path are you? And some days I'm way ahead. Some days it's still a struggle because, like you're saying earlier, Frank, to take back to when we take the test, whether it be a DISC test or any of these other Myers-Briggs or any of these other tests, the mood that we are in
Mhm.
when we take that test, that exam, answer questions, talk to someone else, it's most likely going to be driven by what has happened to us in the last 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 24 hours. So that's going to impact us with our answers. The more we think about, as you just did, that question you're talking about, to be able to smile and ask that question back anytime we're in one of those moods or modes, it kind of helps us connect better with whoever it is we're talking with, correct?
That's correct. Absolutely. Whenever I gave someone a disc profile to do, whether it was recently or 40 years ago, would always give instructions. Do not do this if you're coming from or going to anything stressful. Do not allow any interruptions and do whatever you need to do to have a singular focus on this short little input exercise, which takes 10 minutes. Because, right, we are influenced by others around us. That reminds me of another test that was done with two groups, or pardon me, yes, two groups. And forgive me for forgetting the citation, but it involved a dental office and a radio program. And the radio program in that one group that was waiting in the dental office listened to was about a terrible accident that happened, a bus
Hmm.
going over a cliff and people dying.
Oh,
And then the second group, this was phony. It was just to test their reaction, their emotion reaction. And
you
then
got mine right there.
another one came up, and instead it gave news of some horrible, violent situation in which there was a perpetrator and victims. And then the people were put into a room to discuss together uh, an issue around the meeting, and they thought they were there to talk about the dental practice, and they were given how should I say fluffy questions just to make conversation. And what the observers noticed is those people who listened to the bad news about sad news about some accident that happened had a deeper connection and empathy with others in the room. And those who had listened to the bad news of some evil crime that had happened were more distant and lacked eye contact and even involvement. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. And I think more of us, if not every one of us, needs to go through that test, that concept, even in high school or college. I think that's something we all need to be introduced to. And I'm just impressed with all of your 4 decades of what you've done and been involved with, that you can see those and then truly bring those to life on your day-to-day efforts. And if I can touch just a little bit further with that, since you have been doing this for 40 plus years, can you think of some things that are more different today? You said some of them about the testing, but as far as working with the people themselves, your coaching and skills development,
Yes.
what do you see challenging the leaders more, or do you see anything, some things challenging leaders more today than they did 10, 20, 30, even 40 plus years ago?
Oh my, yeah, yes, 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 of course. There's two parts to your answer. One is the format of training, and two is the content of problems that leadership faces today. So I'll speak on content first, and then the more experiential side of the question. Back in the day, as I said, we used to do intensives, all day seminars or retreats. I would bring the United Way up to Gold Lake Ranch above Boulder, and we'd have a fun weekend retreat and have studies, or I'd bring people to a resort up in Estes Park and have on the job vacations with the University of Denver staff. And that was good. That was fulfilling. We can get a lot done in one day. And then that also broke down into workshops. This is pre-internet, mind you. So the work involved content and surveys and manual registrations. Then came the internet. And with the internet, the major change in delivering services is online self paced learning programs. So anyone who's a good teacher is probably looking at developing residual development of their business by making an online course or having whatever content they're developing mature into content that could be put into that format. The most recent changes in tendencies, trends rather, in the training industry is that, especially with the economic situation, corporations need to pinch their pennies. They can't afford to write a big fat check for you to come in and do your long, big, intensive program. Maybe they can, but the preference is for consultants, trainers like us to deal with immediate, real time problems right now and to involve and engage the people directly and to develop training that's wrapped around an immediate problem. Perhaps it's attrition, perhaps it's conflict. That's the new training. I'm adapting along with Wiley and other disc trainers to that format so that we can empower in-house trainers, not replace them. The train the trainer
Oh, I like that.
the train the trainer concept came about in the early stages, that first phase, and it developed into affiliate programs in the second phase. But now it's more, how can I make myself not indispensable, but valuable only when the in-house trainer really, really, really needs me, and to minimize that expense. Many trainers are not getting in sync with this new paradigm shift. It's fun to go in and deliver your entire process, your book, your delivery, and that still is out there. But what's really necessary, particularly given how conflict has so saturated our work environments, it's more important to be able to come together and solve that. The way we do that, the way I do that, is through an online platform called Catalyst, which helps the DISC person, the person who's taken the profile in the corporation, to go in and do a comparison. I could go in and look up my fellow workers' profile, get a printout of the same disk profile with our dots in different places. And in addition to that, I can also get a readout on my degree of resistance to changing my behavior to more acceptable behavior, which was hard for me to read at first, given my profile. But we all can benefit from a little bit of humility, eh? Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
what else can I tell you about that? Oh, you can also do a blind. This has been around since the paper disc back in the 80s. You could do a blind profile. Salespeople used to use it that way. They would go into say, a car salesman's meeting with a couple, and they'd go into the next room. And now you could go onto the system and plug in what you think is their profile. It's a quick and dirty profile, and it'll give you a comparison, and it'll actually tell you how to speak to the people, how not to speak to
Wow.
people. This tool has also been used over half a million there's over 70 million profiles have been used to date. Over a million a year are used, and over half a million have been used in premarital counseling so that the counselor could tell A and B, well, you are a driver and you move too fast for this person who's quiet and reflective, and quiet and reflective person. Your partner can't read your mind. You need to speak up, even if it's uncomfortable. We need to teach you some segues for how to break the ice and say, I'm nervous. I don't want to talk about this, but I must, and provide training. And last of all, I've also offered one on one training with all the historical patterns with local therapists and counselors. I have a friend who's an elder guardian, and I've been able, over the course of a year, to go through each of the 12 profiles and to help make him a better counselor. So that's the way we address the conflict, the piece of the profile. And you're right, it has to do with the environment and the interpretation.
It does. And I liked what you just said about reading minds. How many of us think the other person knows everything that we know, and we speak to them as if they have read our mind and know so much more than they actually know. That brings a huge challenge into collaboration and communication, right?
It's a calming challenge. We're so
It is
used,
coming.
our thinking is so used to making assumptions that we translate as facts. So I make an observation about an exchange I had with someone, and that interpretation is only my assumption that's passed through my bias filters. It's not it's not an absolute fact. Memory is
Mm-mm.
selective. We interpret and store. I remember having an argument, and in my file, my complaint file up there, I can remember the 4 or 5 major points for why I could debate and win and beat that other person. But what sense is it for me to waste my mental time on that mental rehearsing and rehashing an argument when I really need to, as the productive conflict philosophy teaches, learn how to adjust my own first thought. The productive conflict I teach on is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, that is, checking our impulsive, immediate self talk, reframing that self talk. Again, this is enforced behavior, something that might make you feel like you're acting or phony, but it's a way of accepting an attitude that will make you better received by the other person, even if they're angry with you.
That's a very good point. And some of the things you were talking about there makes me think of when people say, make certain comments when they say, you know, no, if I knew, I wouldn't come to you to start with.
Once again, our assumptive mind. Uh, we all took Assertiveness 101 40 years ago, but we've forgotten the feedback loop. We're supposed to check in and say, is this what you're saying? Here's what my understanding of your words. But instead, once again, most of us don't practice listening. Listening is simply what we do while we're waiting for our turn to talk.
That's so true. I wish I need to put that on my wall too, because that's one of the things that we do. We are just waiting for our next turn to be able to input something, give something some input into that process. And as you're just mentioning, so much of what we hear, excuse me, is rumors. And that's what we're basing a lot of what we're talking about. And the end result is sometimes disastrous because we're working on the rumors based on what we heard. We have no facts, there's no reality to it. But if we hear it, and especially if we say it, it becomes fact in our mind.
In our mind.
True. And if I can touch on that just a little bit, and we're running down here to about 13 minutes left. We still have some time. But
Okay.
again, I'm very impressed with your background. And as you say, you're a global goodwill ambassador. That is impressive. Now, work? How do you handle that with your business expertise? And you're working with the global goodwill and good causes. How can you help us combine and integrate some of those types of what would be thought processes that you utilize to
Absolutely.
help create solutions?
Absolutely. I previously walled those two worlds. I believe a good deed done is best known only by God and yourself. I didn't want to brag about anything, but I received recognition in 2017 for helping to develop a nonprofit that would rejoin broken families. We agreed we wouldn't get into anything that was heavy legally or psychologically, but if families were separated only because of a little bit of money or something, we would create grants. This was initiated by the Didinga tribe that came from Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And we began with the Kenya refugees, the migrants and immigrants. We are still active today. It's called the Yalale Hill Organization.
Okay.
We're how should I say this? We're bypassing red tape and going direct to direct services. So the majority of the monies that come in go directly to bump in the road grants and larger grants for immigrants who are making cultural adjustment here. I serve as an advisor for that team, and I apply the same principles of organization effectiveness with that group as I do with a for profit organization. The difference is that For-profit corporations often want me to help simply to multiply the bottom line numbers, the overall the faucets of the organization, the various number ratios that we measure, which I'm good at. I can do that very dispassionately. But applying myself to the nonprofit environment and helping good causes fulfills me personally. Um, I'm paid with love, real love. And as you were saying about the influence of environment, when I leave that role as global goodwill ambassador and put on the my commercial hat, I still have that warm feeling that I'm here to serve this other person and to earn the respect and to earn their confidence in the ability to make changes that probably were probably unimaginable before.
It sounds like you are touching on a lot of things where you learn how to teach things, excuse me, many, many years ago when they were possibly in their infancy. Now, over the last, again, 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years, you have seen them improve within themselves a lot. So you've possibly grown with it, been part of that growth, and see how we can better use things today that not on purpose, but do you think maybe unknowingly mistaught a few years back?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, I constantly look at the larger picture, the societal influences on individual behavior, and I see how, generally speaking, society tends to, and polls bear this out. We tend to worry about and discuss similar things. We're upset about A, B, and C, for example. That might change, but generally that's the same. I think the answer is we're not aware of how reflexive we are, how we are responding to the environment rather than taking control of our own attitude over our reaction to the environment. I'm not going to turn on the news tonight and get sick to my stomach before I go to bed because everyone's fighting. I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm going to do something that involves human contact with others, whether it's a meditation on someone I love or a letter. Remember letters? I actually write letters to friends. I learned
Wow.
in the early part of my career. Yeah, it shocks the heck out of people when they get a written letter and it's a thoughtful letter. How archaic. But I remember a study that was done. Again, I learned this early in my career and it benefited me much. A study was done, and again, I'm not going to have the citation at hand, but a study was done that basically said that the first four interactions we have in the day sets our attitude, sets our mood for the day in all our relationships. Even if you're solo, it could be the bus driver, it could be the retail clerk at the Starbucks, it could be a stranger on the street or someone waiting at the bus stop with you. But
Could it be the dream? Sorry to interrupt you here, but could it be the dream that we just had before we woke up that morning?
yes,
And then how we woke up next to our spouse and or
yes,
see our children or
yes, love, love, love. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, so I would say to people, be aware of this, and especially if you're someone who's solo or not so socially active, carefully choose the first few conversations you have in the day. Do that. There are days when where I'm not obligated to meet or talk with people. I can have a mouth fast for the day, but I make a point of calling up others who I want to give support to or show some interest in or to get some feedback from, and simply a few social minutes, and it tunes my attitude for the day.
that's beautiful. I mean that's an awesome way to think about that because as you mentioned, as we tune a guitar or tune a musical instrument, you can tune your day. So it's playing the sound, it's rehearsing the sound that you want to hear for the rest of your morning, afternoon, or the whole day, tuned to your perceptions. It works so well. Frank, thank you so much. We have about little over 5 minutes left. Let me go quickly over a disk URL that you sent me. I just
Okay.
put it into the chat. Can you tell me a little bit about what this URL will help us
What
do?
is that a
It's your
YouTube?
it's your it's your disk. The one you sent me on disk. It is a YouTube, yes.
Oh, that's an introductory description of the definition of DISC. So for those who are brand new to DISC, it'll give a basic definition. I will, in closing, since we only have a few minutes, tell you something that will be helpful in terms of minimizing tension in relationships. And you don't have to be an expert at DISC or even take DISC to know this. But DISC, D stands for dominance, assertive aggressiveness. Those people tend to be short tempered. They deal with a lot more anger. They tend to have uh, different skills. Their people skills are not their primary skills, but they have the ability to bust through walls and impossibilities and to move on magic hunches. You need those kind of people, but they can come across as being insensitive to others. If you want to connect better with someone who has this behavior, predominant behavior, first observe their behavior. If they're fast, aggressive, talkative, and they're obviously dominant types, their greatest fear is the fear of being taken advantage of. If you remember one thing from today, remember that. And if you could find a way in the dialogue to help them, and it might not be a conflict point, it may be them wanting to dominate the conversation. You might let go of the rope and let the dominant person run. They'll take that as respect. The high I, they're all about people, empathy. So their greatest fear is fear of loss of approval or affection. So if you have a conflict with them, don't reject them. Fight the problem, not the person. Don't reject them.
Well said.
If you find the S, that stands for steadiness. And that's someone who likes calmness, policy, family, keeps everything balanced. So don't, their greatest fear of is fear of change. Don't tell them you've got some new, innovative, dynamic, exciting idea. Tell them you're going to take them from A peacefully to B, calmly to C to D, and you're going to walk them through a process that results in this big dynamic change. And then last of all, the C, the compliant type. These are sometimes the hardest to read because this behavior is not indicative of the style. Sometimes people fall into this pattern where they just want to listen. They're the new boy at the party or conference and they just want to absorb. So you might misread and think this person's a high C when it's just high C behavior. Like I said earlier, anyone could exhibit any of these behaviors. Their greatest fear is fear of loss of accuracy. They're the scientists, they're the engineers, they're the chemists, they're the ones who are going to ask the annoying, nitpicking million little questions about the project. But bear with them, they're not antagonistic. They just need that for their security. If you learn to recognize these four fears, the fear of being taken advantage of, the fear of loss of approval and affection, the fear of loss of security, and the fear of loss of accuracy, and learn just these four tips, you'll move forward in having greater connection, intimacy, trust, and connection with others.
I like that, Frank. I think that's something that I've taken it before, but it's been decades ago. I need to take it again. I will review your website, that URL you sent, and update myself on those. I also just put out, and thank you very much, your free PDF on productive conflict. That's in the chat also. We only have about a minute left, but could you go ahead and fill us in quickly on what that tells us?
That ebook will give you the background on productive conflict. It'll give you insights on how the entire process works. That's as much as I can tell you for now. If you want more information, contact me directly and I'll give you appropriate links. Last of all, if there's strong enough interest with this group, simply contact me to get on my advanced notification list. And soon I will schedule a DISC productive conflict preview for free, what my competitors would charge. But I'll spoil you and give you a presentation and even provide a free mini DISC infographic of your profile.
That is excellent, Frank. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to walk over here and grab your, if I can here, I'm not going to be able to grab it. Maybe I did. Hold on a second. I did. Let me put your URL also in the in the chat. Do that right now. So many keys. There you go. I just put your URL in the chat also. So please, everyone, take advantage of this. Frank has provided us with the YouTube on the disk information. He's provided us with his free PDF on productive conflict. And if you have any questions, anything that Frank might be able to help you with, his domain, his URL for his website is out there. Give him a call. Frank, again, it's good seeing you. We talk once in a while, but I just appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for everything you're doing to bring unity to relationships, to families, and to the world.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. Everyone, that's all for today. I hope to see you again next week. Achieving Unity, Success Formula. It's us. We're part of that formula. Let's make it happen. Thank you all. Cheers.